Hello everyone, welcome back to Anthropology PYQ series. So friends, first of all, I welcome you all to this series on behalf of SRIRAM's IAS and myself, Dr. Suresh Guramkunda. So friends, in this series, we are trying to just learn and solve one PYQ one day. So most of you are following regularly and those who are new. So let's try to just recap. What's the objective of the program? So the objective of our program is that let's try to decode every question that has been asked in the previous years, and let's master every concept that is behind it. So that's our major objective. So that's how we are proceeding, and in this series we have done almost all the 10 marker questions that have been asked in the 2025. So I hope you can also witness that. So those who haven't gone through those that questions, so please just go through the channel so where you can find the rest concepts also. So friends, in today's discussion, let us proceed with the new question. So the question of the day for us is, write notes on the following in 150 words. So the question says, our question is about the fetal origin of adult diseases and contribution of David Barker. So this is the question. So the question is relevant, or the question has been picked from the epidemiological anthropology unit point of view. So I hope that is clear to you. So most of you might not have catched it because this is with respect to adult diseases. So diseases, the health disease, that concept we'll be studying in epidemiological anthropology in your paper 1. So from that section the question has been picked. So friends, now this question is not only useful for our academic purposes. This question, if you systematically understand this concept, this will help you beautifully in your day-to-day lives also. So even in your families also, you can just apply this particular knowledge to enhance the health of the fetuses, like that. So let's try to understand what about this particular concept and who is David Barker and what about his contributions in a systematic fashion. So before we proceed to that, let me tell you the beauty of anthropology. So anthropology is one of the interesting subjects we say. Why? It not only simply helps us to clear the examination, rather it also gives some valuable insights which can make us more humane, and particularly physical anthropology makes us more enriched with the knowledge. So this is one such concept which makes you more enriched with the knowledge. So let's try to understand what is this all about. So first, let's proceed with the approach, how we can approach to the question. So in the introduction, basically you can mention about the fetal origins of adult diseases. So what is this hypothesis is all about? And other name for this is Barker's hypothesis. So David Barker was the person who introduced this. So in the introduction, you can basically say what is FOAD hypothesis or FOAD hypothesis, and you can simply mention who is David Barker and what was his contributions, like that. So that's one way you can introduce. Then in the body portion of the answer, so you have to address two sections. So first section is you have to systematically explain about the concept of the FOAD, so fetal origins of adult disease. So second thing, you have to highlight the David Barker's contributions to the science and technology and particularly to anthropology. So this is where you have to just address the body portion of the answer. And then in the conclusion, you can simply or you can systematically emphasize the need for your improved maternal nutrition and early life interventions to reduce chronic disease burden. So friends, listen carefully. Now, if a person in your house, let's say for example, your sister or your sister-in-law or anyone, if a person is a conceived person, pregnant person, so then usually the elders will say, or elders will talk about the nutrition. So have you heard about that? And if you see from the perspective of our India, so in India, lot of maternal nutritional programs are there, starting from the ICDS program, Integrated Child Development Services program, to our recent Poshan Abhiyan 2. So in between, there are so many schemes that the Indian government is running. So be it could be Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, be it could be the National Nutrition Mission, that is Poshan Abhiyan. So all these things are concerned with enriching the maternal nutrition. So what's the need? So what happens if the maternal nutrition is poor? So that's all about this particular concept. So let's try to understand the concept, that is fetal origins of adult diseases. So the name itself, it says that the fetal origins of adult diseases. So what is this hypothesis? So this hypothesis has been pioneered by David Barker. So David Barker, in fact, he is a British anthropologist, British scholar, so British physician. So he systematically developed this particular hypothesis or concept. So this is also known as the Barker's hypothesis, or it is also called as the developmental origins of health disease concept. Developmental origins of health and disease. How diseases will be developed during the developmental stage of an organism, or how the chronic diseases in the adults will be developed when the particular person is there in the fetal stage. So that particular concept has been advocated by David Barker systematically in this particular hypothesis. So what does this say, or what does this hypothesis say? So just look here. It proposes that many chronic diseases in adulthood originate from the adaptations made by the fetus when the fetus is in womb. So when the fetus is in the womb, or when the fetus is in intrauterine life, then whatever the environment that the fetus has, fetus will be adapted to that particular environment. So what environment here means what? What kind of nutrition the mother has, what kind of the conditions like hypoxic condition, or like things like maternal stress. So all of them will be the environment or intrauterine environment of that particular fetus. So all these factors like poor nutrition, hypoxia, or maternal stress, all of them will help the child or fetus to adapt to that particular conditions. And then what happens? They will instigate to rise or serve certain diseases in the adulthood. So let's try to understand that also in a systematic fashion. Now, what does these adaptations do? Temporarily, children or fetus will adapt to that intrauterine environment. Then what happens? Then they will use, or they will ensure short-term survival. But what happens in the long run? In long run or in long term, the physiological changes will make them vulnerable to diseases in the adulthood. So they have compromised with their environment, and they have adjusted and adapted to that particular environment. Let's say, for example, poor nutrition. So child has been adapted, or fetus has been adapted to poor nutrition. Now, once he comes out, then we'll be just giving that particular fetus or child with a good calorie-rich diet. So then there arises some issues. So what are those issues? Let's try to understand. So now, if you happen to see, what are the core principles of this particular hypothesis? That is fetal origin of adult diseases. So again, I am just explaining so that it would be clear for you. So how in the adult stage of the man or human being, diseases will be originated. So we have a lot of chronic diseases, like let's say, for example, coronary heart disease, or heart stroke, or hypertension, type 2 diabetes, or obesity, like PCOS. Okay, then chronic kidney disease or osteoporosis. These are some of the chronic diseases that we can see in the adult stage of the life. But do you know that certain intrauterine conditions may trigger the conditions to appear in the later times? So this concept is all nothing but the fetal origins of adult diseases. Are you getting that? So this concept or this hypothesis is chiefly made up of three core principles. What are those principles? So the first principle is that thrifty phenotype hypothesis or thrifty phenotype pathway. So what is this thrifty phenotype pathway? Let's try to understand it in the next slide. Now, epigenetic programming. Epigenetic programming is the second principle that is there in this concept. Then critical windows of the development and programming. So this is another important component of the fetal origins of adult hypothesis. So let's understand one by one in a systematic fashion. So now for here you remember these diseases. That means these are certain diseases, be it could be hypertension, be it could be diabetes mellitus, that is type 2 diabetes, or like coronary heart diseases. So all of them, so there is possibility that they may be triggered to develop when the child is in the fetus stage, in the intrauterine life. So that's the core concept. So what is thrifty phenotype hypothesis? What does this say? So usually this concept, so the word thrifty basically refers to, simply to say, efficient use of the calories or efficient or conservation of the calories. So whatever the calories or whatever the amount of energy that is available, so adjusting to that and efficiently using that in a conservative way. So that is nothing but the thrifty. Now we have the word thrifty phenotype. Thrifty phenotype means, phenotype is nothing but the morphological expression, morphological characteristics. So the height of the person, the weight of the person, so all of them are nothing but the morphological characters. Are you able to catch it? Now what happens here is that, so thrifty phenotype hypothesis, it explains how a fetus adapts to the poor intrauterine nutrition. So poor intrauterine nutrition by developing thrifty metabolic profile. So when there are inadequacy with respect to the nutrition, or when poor intrauterine nutrition conditions are there, then the fetus will adapt to that particular conditions of and environment, and there what happens systematically, they will develop their phenotype, the height, weight, etc. to that particular nutrition. So that adaptation is basically nothing but thrifty phenotype. Can you able to follow that? Now what happens here? So these adaptations will help them for short-term survival. Short-term survival means, so temporarily they will be helpful unless the child or the fetus is in the womb. Then what happens? Once the fetus comes out, so child will take up with low birth weight. So that's very, very important thing. So if a person has delivered, let's say for example, one of your family members has given birth to a newborn baby. So then what do we ask? First thing, what's the weight of the baby? Do we ask, don't we ask that? So let's say for example, what's the average weight that should be there for a normal newborn baby? So if we say 2.5 to 4 kgs, 2.5 to 4 kilograms is the normal, the birth weight that a child can have. So here what happens? The child has, or the fetus has adapted to poor intrauterine nutrition conditions. So there what happens? Child will born with the low birth weight. So weight less than 2.5 kilograms, 2 kilograms, 2.2 kilograms, like that. So this is one important sign that this particular child may develop some chronic diseases when he or she reaches to the adulthood. Okay, so that is one thing. So what happens here? It may predispose the individual for chronic diseases in the adulthood. So that is the thrifty phenotype hypothesis, right? So then, what does this thrifty metabolic profile includes? So thrifty metabolic profile generally includes, so they will adjust to some of the conditions, like let's say increased insulin resistance. So resistance to the insulin, that's one thing we'll get. Reduced pancreatic beta cell mass. So that is another type of adaptation. Then altered lipid storage patterns. So lipid storage patterns will be altered. So that like fat intake and fat storage metabolism will be altered. So all these things. So when does these things will happen? So these things will happen in the intrauterine period. So that's one thing. So this is one concept, that is thrifty phenotype hypothesis. Okay, then what about the next thing? So next principle or next concept in this FOAD is that epigenetic programming. So try to look at the name, epigenetic programming. So epi means what? Outside. Genetic means what? The genetic composition. So what happens in this type of programming? So it refers to basically permanent changes in the gene expression caused by fetal environment. So usually the genes will be expressed. This genetic expression is nothing but when the genes will be converted, DNA is converted into certain protein. So protein synthesis. When the protein synthesis is happened, so then what happens? The fetal environment, that especially the nutrition, stress or placental signals, so it will influence the disease risk in the adulthood. So that's what this concept says. So epigenetic programming. So outside the genetic composition, outside the genetic activities. So that's it. So there could be some permanent changes in the gene expression. So it's not within the DNA sequence. If it is DNA sequence, we will say, we won't say it as epigenetic, we will say endogenetic, like that. So try to remember it. Now, what are the key mechanisms involved in this epigenetic programming? First mechanism that might be there is that DNA methylation. So methylation of the DNA, that is adding of the methyl group so that it switches the genes off. So certain genes will be switched off so that the protein synthesis will be altered. So that would be one thing. Then histone modification. Histone is one important amino acid. So modifications with respect to this. So alterations of histone, it alters how tightly DNA is wrapped. So that is one thing we can see. So this will further increase or decrease the gene activity. Expression of the gene will be impacted. So that is one thing. Then what happens? Non-coding RNAs. So that is another important thing. So this actually, it regulates the gene behavior. So here what happens? So non-coding of the DNA may occur. So that's another important aspect that may happen. So all of these changes, friends, so they will happen or they will occur during the critical windows of the fetal development. So what are these critical windows of fetal development? Further we have to understand this. So there are certain phases or there are certain periods during which the critical organs of the fetus will be developed. Be it could be the heart, be it could be the kidneys, be it could be lungs, or be it could be the brain or musculoskeletal systems. So all of these systems, they will develop in a systematic period or they will develop in a particular time period. Are you getting that? So all those periods are basically known as critical windows of the fetal development. So if there is any particular factors that are influencing that particular period, they will show impact on that particular organ development. So let's see what is this critical window development program, window development aspects like that. So if you see in every fetus, if you take up, so during the early gestation period, that is roughly 6 to 9 weeks of the gestation. So during that period, heart will be developing for that particular fetus. So even if you go for early scan, so in the early scan also, you can hear the heartbeat of the child after this period. So until 6 to 9 weeks, so you won't hear the heartbeat of the fetus. So that's one thing. So during this period, heart will develop in the fetus. Then if in case, if there is poor nutrition during this period, that is 6 to 9 weeks or in this period, so the period of conceiving to till 9 weeks or 10 weeks period, then what happens? It leads to increased risk of coronary heart diseases or heart failure in the adulthood. So try to listen it carefully so that you also can use or you also can apply in your family members. So remember very careful, if a particular person is conceived in our home, so try to check with respect to their nutritional aspects properly. From the beginning, it has to be done. Second, in the mid-gestation period, roughly to say, so from 3 months to in the second trimester, that you can say. In the second trimester, what happens? Kidneys will start developing in a particular fetus. So in case, if there is any sort of nutritional issues during that time, what happens? The nephron formation is completed usually before the birth. So starting from the mid-gestation to before birth, nephron formation will be done. But if there is any intrauterine stress, if the mother he has any psychological stress, so then what happens? This psychological stress or intrauterine stress, it lowers the nephron's number. So when the nephron number is lowered, so obviously in adults, adult hypertension and chronic kidney diseases may surf in the future. That's very, very important. Try to catch it. So what is a nephron? Nephron is nothing but it's the functional unit of the renal system, kidneys. So like for example, for a living organism, cell is the functional unit. In the similar fashion, for kidney, so nephron is the functional unit. So if there is any sort of issues like intrauterine stress, it hampers the nephron numbers. So the nephron numbers will be lowered. So due to this, hypertension may arise in the adulthood stage. So this is another important aspect that you should remember and you should take care. So you should not subject the mother to any sort of stress, or the mother should take care of them. So they should not breathe more of stress within them. So they have to be peaceful, they have to be in calm posture. So that's very, very important thing, right? Now, if you see in the late gestation period, pancreas will be developed. So that is in the third trimester period. So pancreas, alpha cells, beta cells of pancreas, they will secrete the insulin. So what happens here? Under nutrition during the third trimester, it reduces the beta cell number. So when the beta cell number of the pancreas that reduces, then what happens? Listen here. Insulin secretion capacity will be further hampered. So when the insulin secretion capacity is hampered, then what happens? It leads to type 2 diabetes, well, type 2 diabetes in the adulthood stage. Are you getting that? Then metabolic syndromes may also start. So key things that you have to remember here is that we may usually think that the diabetes, hypertension, they may surf in the adults due to some hormonal imbalances like that. So friends, it's not the case. There is possibility that these diseases, like be it could be coronary heart disease, be it could be hypertension, or be it could be the type 2 diabetes, all of them can be originated when you are at the fetus stage only. So remember this and implement this in your respective families and in your cases also. So that's my advice and caution to all of you. Now look at the next thing. If you look from the skeletal systems, so what happens? The skeletal systems will be developed from the second trimester period onwards. So there what happens? If there is any sort of issues with respect to the calcium and micronutrient deficiency, calcium, iron, so vitamin B12, so these things, if there is any sort of deficiency with respect to these things, then what happens? It leads to impaired bone mineralization. Bone mineralization will be impaired. So due to this, what may happen means the risk of osteoporosis in adulthood may surf. So if you happen to observe in the day-to-day life also, so mostly the pregnant women will be checking up the iron and folic acid tablets. Have you observed that? And they might be further taking calcium tablets also from the second trimester onwards. So have you observed that? So calcium and such kind of micronutrient aspects, they will be very much helpful. Are you getting that? So that's very, very, very important. So apart from this, nutrition should be proper. So this is one important aspect that you should remember. So these are all nothing but the critical windows of development. So in each stage, a particular organ will be developing. So if there is stress, if there is undernutrition, or if there is any sort of malnutrition for mothers, this intrauterine malnutrition will further it influences the fetus. So that's what the case. So that is all about this. So here further there is a concept called as the concept of mismatch. So the concept of mismatch is also there. So if higher the difference of the nutritional within the intrauterine as well as the outside environment, so then more would be the frequency of the occurrence of these particular diseases. So that is also one thing. So if let's say for example when the fetus is in womb, so the mother has very poor nutritional intake, and once she gave birth to the fetus and the child has been given good nutrition aftermath, then what happens? This mismatch will create further rise in the frequency of occurrence of the diseases. So that is another important aspect, right? So you must and should also remember that. So that is one concept called as the mismatch concept. So that has been further advocated by David Barker. So David Barker, so a British physiologist. So FOAD in the Indian context. How we can see FOAD in the India? So that's another important aspect that we should understand. So if we happen to observe in India, so India has nearly around 28% of the low birth weight babies. So on average, around 28% of the low birth weight baby deliveries we are seeing or we are observing in India. So what does this indicate? So low birth weight is an indication that the mother has had the poor nutrition, and the poor nutrition again it may brief for some diseases in the adulthood stage. So that's one thing that you should remember, right? So then there was a study that has been conducted by Chitra Karuna Rekha. So Chitra Karuna Rekha study is nothing but the Pune maternal nutrition study. This Pune maternal study, nutritional study, this showed that or is established that mothers with low micronutrient intake, micronutrient intake, they have given the birth to babies with low muscle mass. So this has established this particular hypothesis. And in fact, in turn what has happened, these babies develop insulin resistance in adults. So remember, if mothers are with low micronutrients, then this may lead to the diabetes type 2. So that's one indication that you should remember. So this study has proved that. And then thin fat Indian baby phenomena. This is another important phenomena that you can remember from Indian context. What is this thin fat Indian baby? Look here. Indian babies appear thin, but they have higher fat percentage in their body. So this is a kind of slight mismatch between their body posture to the body posture to the fat content. So higher fat content, but still they look thin. So this is known as thin fat Indian baby phenomena. So it is, in fact, it is linked to higher diabetes and metabolic syndromes in the adulthood. So that's one thing that you should remember from the Indian context. So I hope that is also clear to you. So this is the concept of fetal origin of adult diseases. So that's one thing. Now we also should systematically understand the contributions of David Barker. So here you can see David Barker. So David Barker was one of the influential physiologists, right? So what he has done some systematic researches. First and foremost contribution that you should remember about David Barker is that he has done systematic cohort studies related to birth. So that is Hertfordshire birth cohort studies. So in England we had a place called as Hertfordshire. So in Hertfordshire, he has done birth cohort studies. So in these studies, what he has identified or found is that he linked low birth weight to adult chronic diseases like coronary heart disease or hypertension, diabetes, etc. So this actually revolutionized the studies in the realm of the medical history. So since then, everyone started taking care with respect to the maternal nutrition. So that's very important. So low birth weight may lead to such kind of diseases. So that was one contribution. Then birth weight as predictor of the adulthood diseases. So that's another important thing that he proved. So what was happening here? He established the idea that womb environment determines the adult disease risk. So the risk of getting prone to the diseases in the adult stage may be shaped within the womb itself. So this concept has been conceptualized by David Barker. So what we can do, if we can nurture the mothers properly when they are in the conceiving stage, so this further helps the babies to escape from getting prone to this kind of diseases. So that's one thing. Then thrifty phenotype model. So we have understood thrifty phenotype model. So it explained that metabolic trade-offs of fetal survival and may leading to adult diseases. So thrifty phenotype model, he explained that. And shift in the public health perspective. So there was a different perspective in the public health. So now what has he has done? So he shifted that public health perspective. What was his contribution here? He emphasized on the maternal nutrition, listen carefully, and he emphasized on antenatal care and early childhood development. So if we can take care of the maternal health care, maternal nutrition, antenatal care, and the early childhood development care, then we can prevent the adulthood diseases or chronic diseases that may arise in the adulthood. So try to imagine how beautiful this concept is, and this is what the beautiful contribution of David Barker. So that's one thing. Now he led to the foundation of DOHAD, that is, it's nothing but developmental origins of health and disease. So how health and disease may have origins during the developmental stages of the fetus. So that's very important thing. So, and he broadened FOAD into multidisciplinary research field. So that is one thing. So to this, so his contributions also include the concept of mismatch. Remember, there is a concept called mismatch. So let's say, for example, more poor the nutrition in the intrauterine stage and rich the nutrition after the birth, there would be a mismatch. So this mismatch will further lead to increased frequency of occurrence of the chronic diseases in the adulthood stage. So they were all nothing but the contributions of David Barker. So you should remember them. And finally, how we can conclude? So we can simply say that David Barker's work proved that many adult diseases originates from the nutritional and physiological conditions in the womb. So what we should do, we must and should take care of the fetus when the fetus is in the womb itself. So how can we take care of the fetus? So we can take care of the fetus by properly nurturing the mother, so providing proper nutrition to the mother and providing or fostering some friendly environment and non-stressful conditions to the women. So this is key to avoid or prevent so many diseases that may surf in the adulthood stage. So that's very, very important that you should remember. Try to apply in your life also, try to apply in your family also, try to educate your friends and families and relatives also, this thing, right? So friends, that's very, very important. Then by showing how early life programming shapes lifelong health, so David Barker transformed the disease prevention into life course approach focused on maternal and child care. So this was another important thing that you can mention in the conclusion. So he systematically transformed the disease prevention into a life course approach. So if you just take care of the maternal care, maternal nutrition, then you may prevent a lot of adulthood diseases in that particular fetus. So how beautifully this thing. So it changed that thing. So ultimately, what was the contribution of David Barker? So ultimately, David Barker showed that the roots of adult health begins before the birth. So you must and should take care of the fetus before the birth itself. So that's all with respect to this particular question. So I hope this particular question, actually, it's not only you should learn it from academic perspective, but also in your daily life, in your day-to-day life, and in your lifetime. Once you can, at least once you can utilize this particular concept. So, is there any doubts from the perspective of this topic, friends? If there is any doubts, you can just ask me now. So those who have joined online, so they can just mention your doubts in the comment section. So meanwhile, those who would want to just get model answer for this particular question, you can just join our Telegram channel. So you can type Anthropology Guide in the Telegram, and there you can pick, or you can join through this link, or you can also scan this QR code that is appearing, and you can just understand it. So that's all from my side. So, okay, Venushri, aspirant, Pragna. So, okay, thank you all for joining this session. So let's meet again tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp, and let's try to come up with another important question. So till then, remember that by 6 to 7 o'clock, you'll be getting the question of the day. And you will have a window period to write the answer till 11:30 a.m. tomorrow. So try to write the question from 7 o'clock to 11:30 a.m. and submit it in the Telegram group. And by 11:30 p.m. in the night, you can expect the feedback and evaluated sheet of yours. So that's all. Thank you all for joining this session. We'll meet tomorrow 11:30 a.m. sharp.